Hey, what's going on, guys? And welcome back to the Spring First Look series where I take a holistic look of all 138 programs that make up the FBS level. And we're getting ready to get out of this top 100. We are a few programs to go before we officially get into the top 100. But before we get into the top 100, there's still a few teams here where, yeah, they're still outside of they're in the bottom 40 teams in the country, but at the same time, it's still teams that have some intrigue and maybe some dark horse potential as well going into this season. So, very excited to go ahead and get into the 103rd ranked team in college football in this episode. And I hope you guys are excited for this team deep dive, or at least this team first look from that 50,000 feet perspective. If you guys are excited, make sure you go ahead and do a couple of things for me. Hit that like button and then also hit that subscribe button as well if you do happen to be brand new to the channel, because there's a lot of work that goes into making these happen. So that would be much appreciated as we go ahead and get into the Wyoming Cowboys, who do come in as your quintessential 103rd ranked team in the country moving into this season, and about a mid-tier team in the Mountain West. I think I have them at roughly number 6. So one of the better teams in this conference outside of the Big Four that will be revealed later on in this series. And it's a critical year as well for Jay Salvo, who takes over after the previous head coach ended up retiring. And it's been they've fallen off, not fallen off a cliff, but they have definitely underperformed in terms of expectations the last couple of seasons. 3-9 in his debut season as the head coach, and then going 4-8 last season, in spite of having multiple players that, according to PFF, will be top 300 prospects, whether it's John Michael Gillenberg, who is a NFL prospect that has an outside shot of being drafted or at least being invited to a pro camp as a undrafted free agent. And then kudos to Caden Barnett, an interior offensive lineman as well. So they had multiple players on this offense, but in spite of that, the offense was a reason that was held back last year, because the defense certainly did its job in terms of keeping them, for the most part, competitive in games. The offense was a little bit of an issue. So outside of those two NFL players that I was talking about, they did do some reshuffling on the offensive side of the ball. They do say goodbye to Caden Anderson, whom, in spite of playing a decent amount for this Wyoming football team last year, almost 2,000 yards passing, 12 touchdowns in the 2025 campaign, he ends up transferring down to the FCS ranks. In spite of having starting experience in the Mountain West, he's going to play for a really good FCS program in the Tarleton State Texans. So normally you don't see players that have meaningful reps go down to the FCS level, but couple of exceptions here, and Caden Anderson is certainly one of them. But they do end up going to the transfer portal in order to fill out that quarterback position in Tyler Hughes, who is also going to be in the reverse of that. Instead of going from the Mountain West down to the FCS level, you have a FCS quarterback who did really well last year with over 3,000 total yards and 31 touchdowns last season. Well, he is now going to come up and potentially be your starting quarterback this year for the Wyoming Cowboys. So that is a pretty nice addition from the William and Mary standout from last season, traveling across the country to be a part of this Wyoming Cowboys program. And then you also potentially see an upgrade at the running back position. So you're looking at a possibility, even though the offensive line may not be as good as what you saw last year. Markel Holman also comes up as a running back from Western Illinois, was a big part of that Leatherback's offense. Over 1,400 total yards and 9 touchdowns the previous year. So Markel Holman is going to be a guy in particular that's going to have to step up in order to help replace some of the production that they lost from John Michael Gillenberg. And they're going to need some receivers in, particularly in that tight end room, to step up as well, to give Tyler Hughes, who I'm going to pencil in as your starting quarterback for this year. Not going to write that in pen by any means. Things still need to be figured out in the spring and summertime. That's going to be critical, particularly the offensive side of the ball, because defensively, they do also lose an all conference piece in Tyrese Boss. He ends up transferring to Arizona, and he was an all conference defensive back. He was a honorable mention on the Mountain West list last year, and so Tyrese Boss, now part of the Arizona Wildcats, where he looks for meaningful playing time in what is a quality Big 12 program in its own right. But I still think the defenses could have a chance to be just as good or maybe even a little bit of a touch better because not only did they add Thaddeus Ganaris, who is an edge rusher transferring in from Dartmouth, had a decent amount of production at Dartmouth in what it was a pretty good Ivy League, multi-bid league in the FCS, had 5 sacks last season. So we know that he's a pretty smart football player as well because you have to be insanely smart to get into an Ivy League school. But they do also add what is going to be a little bit of a dart throw in Anthony Beavers Jr., the safety formerly playing for the USC Trojans. Haven't seen him play very much in his college career, but at the same time, though, what we can say about Anthony Beavers is that he is a former 4-star recruit when going for the high school recruiting process. So there's potential in there that he could live up to if he has the opportunity to get on the field. If he doesn't really play and he doesn't work out, it's not the end of the world, because he hasn't played a ton, and so you shouldn't necessarily expect a ton because you never know what you're going to get. Just because you were a highly touted high school recruit doesn't always mean that it's going to work out at any point in your college career. But the talent is somewhere in there, in order to get that 4-star ranking in the first place. So there is a chance that Anthony Beavers could turn into a quality starter for the Wyoming Cowboys. And if so, I mean, you have the Tyrese Boss replacement right there. You pair that up with a Thaddeus Ganaris who's added, as well as some of the return production coming back. The defense also could be a touch better. It's just in terms of, is the offensive line going to be competent enough to give Tyler Hughes a chance to be successful, as is the backfield mate in Markel Holman. And this is a big year as well from Jay Sovil, the head coach of his Wyoming program, because you are talking about, hey, no kidding, this is year number 3. So, got to see some tangible progress at this point in the year. And I think there is a world where if everything goes right, the defense is just as good and the offense is significantly better. We're talking about a team that could make some serious runs at the Mountain West title game. So let me go ahead and pull up their schedule so that you guys can see what I'm talking about. And listen, I'm not currently projecting Wyoming to be a bowl team right now. I just have some concerns about the offensive weaponry in the passing game and the offensive line to merit them being a bowl team. But if the offensive line's better than expected, the offense has a breakout year and as a unit, defense is just as good or even better. There is a world here where it's a 10-win team in 2026 because they don't have any power conference opponents on their schedule. The non-conference is, you got some winnable games here. Obviously expect them to beat Northern Colorado. Then you have Colorado State, who's in the Pac-12, Central Michigan on the road in the MAC, and then you have UConn at home, who is going to have its debut season with Jason Candle, and you're gonna have that UConn team travel across the country to play you as well. So really, when you're looking at this schedule, there's really only 2 games that I'm circling where I don't really think Wyoming has a shot to win, realistically. The North Dakota State game on the road, going to the Fargo Dome, which people are not going to realize it if you haven't paid much attention to FCS football. That's actually a pretty hard place to go play at. And I think these FBS teams, outside of Jacksonville State, who we know is very familiar with the Bison, they know that it's incredibly hard to go in there and win. And then going on the road to play against UNLV, I think UNLV, obviously part of that Big Four that I'm going to talk about at a later time in depth. I think UNLV has a tremendous amount of talent for a G6 on their roster. So I think that's going to be too much for Wyoming to handle as well. Definitely some couple safe wins. I mean, the Northern Colorado game I already talked about. Then NIU, they get them at home, and you've seen the NIU breakdown. I'm pretty incredibly low on them going into this year. But yeah, beyond that, a lot of winnable games on this schedule. I do have them ultimately going 5-7 with the San Jose State game on the road, as well as playing UTEP on the road as well. But both of those two teams that I mentioned, teams that I'm not very high on going into this year. Already talked about them in the first look series earlier. Then UConn as well. UConn, you know, probably about the same caliber of team, but really what makes the difference is that Wyoming's going to be at home and making a cross country road trip, regardless of how good or bad your team is. That is incredibly hard to do. So Wyoming does have that advantage, especially late in November when this game would likely be taking place. So I think Wyoming does make some progress, at least enough progress to where even if it's not a bowl team, you at least stick with Jay Sovil a little bit longer. He's gonna get steadily better. And like I said, like there's a path for them to get to a bowl game and possibly even surprise some people and maybe be that dark horse contender to make the Mountain West title game if everything goes right for him. So definitely want to hear your thoughts in terms of how you feel about this Wyoming team, who I do have as the 103rd best team in college football. Definitely let me know down in the comment section in terms of what you think, if I'm too high or if I'm too low. And on top of that, if you've been enjoying this series, it takes a lot of work to make the graphics as well as putting these rankings together, record each video for you guys for all 138 teams. I would truly appreciate from the bottom of my heart if you went ahead, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. It really does truly mean a lot to me if you do those things. But for now, this is Jake from College Football Red Zone signing off. And until then, I will see you guys next time. This is Jake from College Football Red Zone signing off. Take care, everybody.